It's a great pleasure for me to be here to talk to you about bringing products with artificial intelligence into the marketplace. It's something that I think we all want to do, and some companies can do it. Some companies actually have some trouble, and hopefully some of the observations I've had over my past couple of years working in this space might be of use to you. So I hope that we can have a good interactive discussion today, and I look forward to doing that. So let me tell you a little bit about Intuit. It's a rather remarkable company. Today we're having our State of the Company address happening in Mountain View right now. It's a 35-year-old startup. Think about that, a 35-year-old startup, a company that is one of only a handful of companies that's been around 35 years ago. And as it's gone through its evolution, it has had to reinvent itself time and time again. In fact, it's a company that reinvents itself almost every day. And I'll tell you why I say that. That's not just marketing speech. That's actually, there's a reason that I say that. And you're going to see that reasoning depicted in my slides and in my talk. We have several well-known products. TurboTax, probably many of you use that to file your taxes. QuickBooks, for those of you who work in the self-employed space or who work as freelancers, run a small business. You might be using QuickBooks. And Mint, those of you who like to track your finances and understand whether or not you're doing well with respect to your finances or not, you might be using Mint. What's amazing about all of these products is that people work with them and they use them and they rely on them. That's a theme that I'm going to be coming back to you with, because when you build products like that, there's a certain engagement model that's there, but much more important than engagement, there's a livelihood that's dependent on it. And when you bring AI and machine learning into that mix, I think it's very fascinating. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So our mission is to power prosperity around the world. What a great mission. If you look at what's happening in society today, at least in my opinion, a lot of things that are happening, a lot of the negatives that are happening are because of prosperity and lack of prosperity in certain situations. Imagine a world where artificial intelligence, machine learning, data come together in order to help people do better in their financial lives. And not just people who live in the tech world, not just people who are working on their phones all the time, people who are bakers, people who are artists, people who are musicians, people who live different walks of life. Imagine giving them the opportunity to do well in their financial lives using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's what really my team and I are all about. So we are thinking about the following: embedding AI throughout our product portfolio to increase prosperity while providing a seamless and delightful experience. So we use these words very deliberately. I chose them very deliberately because the while and the delightful experience is very important. If you have tens of millions of people working on your platform, you need to make sure that if you introduce AI into the mix or machine learning into the mix, that the people are getting a seamless and delightful experience. That's a tough thing to do. And because that's tough, you have to keep on iterating. And that's why I say in one facet, we do try to reinvent ourselves on a regular basis. So what are some of the barriers? If you just go out and do some research here, you'll see what you'd expect, right? This is probably not new news to you. Complexity, weak business cases, missing and disparate data, AI talent shortages, and lack of budget. Now, those could be true for large enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, but some of you might be working in startups, and you say, well, gosh, we actually don't have the data necessary in order to pull this off. So we don't even have disparate data. All of our data is missing because we're just starting out, right? Or you might be in a situation where you say, I've got this idea. Maybe you work in a small, medium-sized business, or maybe even a large enterprise. I've got this idea, but no one's paying attention to it. So I'm going to slap deep learning onto the title of it and hope that they pay attention to me. That's a strategy, certainly, but probably not the best one, because what people are looking for is the ROI, the results from your work, And it's a tough thing because if you don't have the ability and if you don't have the time and the opportunity to put your idea forward and get it tested, how on earth are you going to measure an ROI, right? It's a difficult thing to do, but that's what people are looking for. And so you can see the graph there that some of these things actually turn into big problems for people. So how do you address something like that? Well, I'm going to take you through the following. I'm going to talk about what it means to get an organization AI ready, and admittedly this is for probably a larger company. Determine the right AI applications for your business and how to accelerate your AI efforts with speed and scale. And as I mentioned, this is for probably medium to larger sized businesses. If you're in a small business or if you're in a startup, for instance, and you're interested in this, let's talk about it during the Q&A session because I have a few ideas there. So how do you get an organization ready for AI? I love this Venn diagram because on it we've got three things that I think are super important. First, technology, that top circle. People and data. Technology, people, data. Those three things, you've got to have them in order to pull something together. Now, having said that, some of you in the audience might say, I already knew that. Like everybody says technology, people, and data, so what's new here? Well, what's new is this idea that these things have to come together in a certain way and that diversity plays a critical role in your success. That's how it's new, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we want to instill a common data science mission across the company. We want to incorporate design thinking. That's how you delight the customer. We want to infuse product management mindset into data scientists. So data scientists, I know many of them, believe that they're a certain elite class, that they have certain educational backgrounds, and because of that, they have certain privileges, and that people who are on the business side, who are product managers, who are program managers, who are running businesses, quote, just can't understand it. This is an unfortunate way of thinking, right? Because the right thing to do, in my opinion, the right way to approach it is to say that we're in a partnership. You know the customer, I know the technology. We need to work together in order to bring something to the market. So that's, I think, very important. And then finally, building a diverse and inclusive team, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So in the center of these circles, in the center of this Venn diagram, is where at least I think you can have innovation. Now, sometimes people say, you know what, I'm going to totally just build and focus on the technology. And I'm going to take that technology to fruition. And some companies have been able to do that. They're very well known, and more power to them. Some say it's all about my team. I'm going to focus on the team, and the team is going to deliver. Others say I'm going to build something, maybe a network effect, and that network is going to generate data for me. Once I get that data, then I'm going to be able to scale. Those are three valid ways of thinking about it. What I'm trying to propose here, though, is that your chances are better if you're in the intersection of those three ideas. Don't spend too much time only thinking about one at the expense of the other. So the way we've organized, and I've seen this at Intuit as well as at other companies, and again, this is kind of a medium to large size company viewpoint, is to have teams federated into the business units. So if you already have a business established, you federate the teams into those business units, and they are accountable to the business. But they report, in my case at least, they report all to me, and that allows for centralization of purpose, of mission, of values, of culture, also of succession plans, all kinds of things that are important for a long-term durability and long-term advantage. We also, you'll notice, have data analysts. So these are people who analyze data using SQL and other types of tools, produce reports, produce graphs, and so forth. Super important function. Those teams also dotted line report to me for various reasons. And what we're finding is that bringing these teams together, analytics, data science, data engineering, bringing together with product management is hopefully going to be a catalyst for a lot of change within the company. So let's talk a bit about design thinking, because I touched on that earlier in my presentation. This is a philosophy that Intuit really imbibes within its own culture. To give you an idea, when you started Intuit as a new employee, probably the next day you're going to be learning about two things, what we call CDI, customer-driven innovation, and design for delight. I'm going to touch on design for delight here. It's a simple but powerful framework. So what you do is you start off with deep customer empathy. Notice that it doesn't say deep technology necessarily, because we have the understanding that the technology is something that is built in service of the need of a customer, right? So you put the customer empathy first, and you put yourself in his or her shoes, or in their shoes, and see the world through that lens. It's super important because if you're in the business of helping small businesses, for instance, you can't just make certain assumptions about them because each small business is different. Each one is like a snowflake. So you have to develop that customer empathy. The next thing that we talk about is going broad and then going narrow. So you come up with a large number of ideas. We might come up with 5, 7, 10, 14, 21 ideas, and we write them all down, and then we start to dive into each one of them and say, from an AI perspective, which one of these can work? And most importantly, why do you think it can work? If you can't articulate it, it's going to be very difficult for someone else to buy it. It's just that simple. So you have to be able to articulate that value proposition, make sure that it's clear to you, make sure that it's clear to the people that you're working with. And then finally, you have to have the rapid prototyping and that rapid learning from the prototyping that you're doing. And this is where machine learning at scale becomes super exciting. And you'll see that A/B testing plays a critical role here, where you have, even if you've got 500 customers, even if you've got 100 customers, you still have the ability to do some testing and capitalize on the learnings of that testing. If you build a closed loop system, I'll show you an architecture in a moment, you can actually start to capitalize on it and get a lot of advantage out of that. So I also said that you need to infuse product management mindset into data scientists and vice versa. There should not be an us and them, in my opinion, in this particular loop. In fact, what we're doing at Intuit is bringing data science in with the following. First, product development, experience design, product management, and data science. Those 4 things, this is a tetrad that we're bringing, so that in each scrum, those 4 people are available and they are making the decisions about what goes into the product. And so what that means is that if I'm a data scientist and I say, you know, sounds good, but it's not going to work, that's something that the team can know about. Or better yet, if I say, I've got an idea, it's an AI-based idea, what do you think about it? We can go through that process and generate new ideas based on that and hopefully get to a good collaboration. So this fosters good day-to-day collaboration and two-way dialogue. One thing that you might consider is issuing an innovation challenge. So what that means is that you say to your whole staff, maybe 100 people, maybe 10, maybe 1,000 people, it really doesn't matter, send in your best AI and machine learning ideas. It's an open-ended ask, but it is a very powerful way to generate new ideas. You can catalog it, and you can even analyze the ideas that you get. And this is the way we do it. So we build a little form, and you can just read here, this is a fictitious example that we put in, but this form gives you a way of thinking about it. This is part of our D for D and CDI process at Intuit. I'm not going to read it to you, but if you look at the structure of it, it says, first, I am. So you have to identify who you are. Not, I am a product manager at Intuit. That does not matter. What matters is that I am a customer who is a baker in Des Moines, Iowa, and I sell cupcakes for a living. That is who you're building for in a certain context. I'm trying to what? The statement would not be, I'm trying to use a new deep learning algorithm in order to solve my baking problems. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be something like, I want to sell more cupcakes, right? It's got to be something that the customer is trying to do. But what's the problem? If there's no problem, there's no need to build a solution. You have to think about it. Write down what the problem statement is and why. Because of what reason? And how does it make you feel? This is the empathy. If you have nothing to write down there, if it's like blank, it doesn't make me feel anything, probably not a good idea to spend your time on it. But if you say, I feel annoyed, or I think this is really awful, or this is going to cost me money, or this is going to cost me social connections or something like that. Those are big deals for people. And this rubric, this way of thinking, in my opinion, more importantly in the company's opinion, helps people focus down on real problems to work on. So the next thing is building a diverse and inclusive team. And frankly, as I was thinking about this particular slide and talking with my team about it, I didn't want this to come across as diversity is important, we should all have diversity, because I think we all know that. If you've watched any videos recently, you know that already. But the question is, why is diversity important? Is it solely about driving numbers up to a certain value? Or is there something bigger to it than that? And I propose, and I think many of you would agree, that there's something much more important than that. So imagine that you've got a space of products, and for those of you who remember your linear algebra courses or anything, I'm going to take you through it a little bit. If you don't know, don't worry, it'll be fine. But imagine you've got a space of products up there. This is the world that you could build, that gray blob up there, okay? And imagine that you've got an axis there, and that axis represents the team that you have today. Okay, that axis is horizontal, and notice that it has infinite length, but it has a small width associated with it, right? Now, let's say you want to build that product up there where that X is. How on earth are you going to do it? If your team is completely aligned along that single axis, how are you going to go up? It's not actually possible to do that. Mathematically, you can't go up into another dimension unless somebody gives you that dimension, right? And so how do you get that dimension? Well, you could say, well, I'm going to just really work hard with the team that I've got, even though they're all the same thinkers, and I'm just going to keep on going. And what you're going to do in this cartoon example is you're going to go down that axis and you're going to keep on going down that way, right? It's very hard to go upward. Now, if you say, well, I'm going to get some new thoughts in here, so I'm going to hire this guy. He seems like he's a new thinker. I'm going to hire this person. She seems like she's a good thinker. Then you might get up like that. But now if you project that out, what happens? Well, you're headed off certainly in a better direction, but are you going to hit that X, which you think is really where the gold is, where the best value for your customers? It's going to be tough, and in fact, if you eyeball it, you could get up to that height, but you're going to be way out of the product space that you're trying to build in, right? Makes sense? So now, what happens if you have diverse points of view, diverse thinking coming into the mix? Not everybody from the same background, not everybody from the same gender, not everybody from the same profession, but people with different ideas coming together. Now take a look. How would you get to that X? Well, you'd go a little bit to the right and you'd go a little bit up. You can do it now, right? That's one way to think about diversity. And I think this is so important because a lot of us look at the audience here. It's diverse in some ways, but not in others, right? It's very important that we as technologists realize that there's a big world out there that we don't know, and that we need to have people on our teams who do know that world who can help us build the products that we want to do. And there's a lot of evidence for this. Business cases for diversity and inclusion. This is just 4 of them. I'm not going to read through all of them for you, but take a look at it. And you'll see that people are touching on millennials. So if you don't represent their point of view, their understanding, it's going to be tough to build an AI system for them, right? So you have to understand that. And does it mean that you therefore need to go and hire 3 millennials for your team? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know that. But I think what's really important is that you think about it. And don't assume, in my opinion, don't assume that the technology is something that's just going to solve everything for you, because it might do it, but often it doesn't. So determining the right AI applications for your business, this is the customer-driven innovation model that we use. You start with an important unsolved customer problem. Then you think about and how you're going to enable that and why you think you can solve it well. And then you try to build durable customer and corporate advantage by doing that. Now, we think, again, at the center of the 3 circles is where success lies. let me tell you that a lot of times people do spend their time thinking about the first circle, what the customer problem is. And sometimes they think about what they can enable. But for companies that want to reinvent themselves, or companies that are on a journey that's a long-term journey, that durable advantage is very important. And that's where AI and machine learning can play a critical role. If you have data, and if you have people, and if you have the technology infrastructure to leverage those two, you can create durable advantage that can help you stay at the forefront of your industry. So let's take a real-world example. That is a picture of what it takes to do a little bit of the US taxes. Take a look at that. And now let me give you a number. There are literally 80,000 pages of US tax code. Remember, Intuit is a company that does work in taxes. So it seems like a great opportunity to take AI and machine learning and the tax code and somehow put them together in order to create a new system that people can use. That's what TurboTax is. But if you do it wrong, if you say, okay, what's 1040 line number 1? Oh yeah, it's Social Security. And you like type that into your Java program. And then what's line number 2? Oh yeah, it's the person's address, put that in. And you do that across 80,000 pages, it's going to be a pretty tough thing to do. Enter AI. So the latest thing in AI, machine learning, is deep learning. So just as a joke, you could say, I'm going to take that, put it in a deep learning model, and boy, I'm going to do my cross-validation, I'm going to do my gradient descent, I'm going to get the answer to it. It's going to be very difficult to do that. You actually have to think about artificial intelligence in a more holistic way, where deep learning, statistical learning, natural language processing, but then also rules and expert systems come together. Because last I checked, when you've got a bunch of rules like in the US tax code, you do need to represent those rules internally, and the best way to do that is clearly through the use of expert systems. So this is a very, very daunting task. We're literally building systems that can ingest the US tax code and then convert that into computer code that then tens of millions of people can use, but they don't know what's happening in the back end because it's an AI-based system. That capability is durable advantage, right? It's very difficult to do something like this. An extremely exciting and I'd say visionary product. I'd love to say that this was my idea, but it's not. Many, many people before me worked on it. I'm fortunate to be only a little bit involved with this activity. Other uses of AI and machine learning to simplify tax preparation. So when you get into it and you say, oh my gosh, it's April 14th, taxes are due tomorrow, what am I supposed to do? And you fire up TurboTax, you don't want to go in there and fill out a whole bunch of stuff again and again. You want it to know and personalize to you. Personalization today means, in the bigger world, personalization means that you looked at Chevy trucks on the internet yesterday, so today, and for perpetuity, we're going to show you Chevy trucks. That's what personalization means, right? That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is say, do you have college expenses? Have you done any charitable donations? Do you have a retirement plan? And use that plus all of the user data that we have about you, drive it through that tax knowledge engine that I mentioned, use machine learning in order to validate the whole thing and simplify your tax experience. So that would be cool. If we can do it, we're on that journey. And let me tell you how that leads to scale. So this is the architecture diagram that I told you about, and I'll dwell on it for a few minutes here. So on the left-hand side, at a high level, you've got internal data sources. These are data sources that are available in your company. You also should take advantage of external data sources, like we heard from Juan earlier when he was introducing me. Those external data sources can be extremely important. When you're doing reasoning, when you're building a system that needs to reason, if you just sequester it to the data that you've got, chances are it's not going to do a very good job at reasoning. You need to actually bring multiple data sources together in order to get better reasoning. It would be as though I said, you know, please help me find a new house, but don't look at any houses that are in a certain zip code. It's like, okay, well, I could do that, but you're restricting me from potentially valuable places that I could look. Similarly, you have to open up the data sets that you have within legal and privacy policies, of course. You need to ingest these somehow into a big data platform. I don't mean to imply that all of the data needs to be centralized. In fact, a lot of the work that I've done and my colleagues have done are on distributed systems where the distribution does not include your own data centers or even the data that you own or even the data that you can access at a granular level. So you have to build systems that can work across those types of things. So that big data AI platform does not imply centralization. And then you need to build some sort of a mechanism that can ingest this data and then reason on it. And I've given what I call an AI flywheel. This is something that my team and I worked on at NASA. So we used to use this for spacecraft and aircraft and other areas. And I'm repurposing it for different types of applications now in the financial domain. But basically the idea is that as data comes in, you check if this data is anomalous or not. Is it something that you've seen before? If it is, take one action. If it's not, make sure that you're right. Maybe take another action. If it's a problem in the data, let's say that somebody puts in their data into their TurboTax and they say that they made $100 million last year. Well, could be true, but if the year before they made $50,000, maybe there's an error there. That's an easy problem to work out, but there are more complex problems that can come up. Building anomaly detection and then doing the diagnostics on that, and then doing predictions on that, and then taking action. That's the flywheel that we talk about. And then we want to drive these to endpoints. Those endpoints could be many kinds of endpoints. They could be ambient endpoints, embedded ones, personas. They could be device-facing endpoints. They could be enterprise-facing endpoints, because as you probably know, we have a lot of enterprise work happening into it through partnerships. So what's remarkable about it is if you decompose, at least in my opinion, if you decompose this way into those endpoints, you can start thinking about how to build a network. Right? And this network is another kind of durable advantage that you can use, because now it's taking together customers, endpoints. It's also taking together the ways people interact with your endpoints, bringing all of those back into your data sources through A/B testing. So now as you start to see how people are interacting with the idea that you came up with, what happens is that you can start to adjust back and forth and iterate on a regular basis how you tune your algorithms, how you tune the user experience, how you tune the flow, how you tune the use of the data. And now you can get, hopefully, a very happy and very valuable closed-loop system. Now, deep learning, NLP, natural language understanding, all of these things, decision-making under uncertainty, automated reasoning, all of these things play a critical role in building an AI system that would be running in a production system. But notice that the preponderance of my talk was not about deep learning and things like that. It's not like I don't like those types of technologies. I know that I made a quip or two about it. But I'm a neural networks guy by training. I think they're amazing systems. They can be used for all kinds of cool and useful things. But I think it's a trap to just think about that without the big picture. And so this talk is really more about the big picture, about what we need to do from a holistic standpoint to build AI products that are durable, that can give you durable advantage. Thank you so much for your attention. I will take a few questions now.
Thank you so much. So as mentioned, we have a microphone here for any questions. Does anyone have any questions here? Let me try first one over there. No.
You want to need a microphone? I've heard a lot of voices.
Okay.
In the beginning, you actually showed your org chart where you had data analysts and kind of data architects working underneath your tutelage.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about data scientists being, a interesting group of folks to work with. How do you, but they don't report to you. How do you, again, you talk about kind of in the scrum, bringing them together. How do you guys break that? Because it sounds like they report to somebody different in the organization.
Yeah, so the data scientists, all the AI machine learning engineering data scientists report to me. The analysts dotted line report to me. And currently the function of analytics within Intuit is to provide people with answers to questions. Business people, answers to the questions. They provide answers to operational questions, business questions like that. Your question is, how do they come together in a scrum? Is that what you're saying?
How do they, what the data engineers need to provide data to the data
Yeah.
scientists to be able to successfully
Yeah. Yeah, so there are a couple of things. So I mentioned that tetrad of the data scientist, product manager, experience designer, and product developer. Those four form the scrum. They take inputs from data engineering and from analytics and from other sources in order to make decisions, but those four are the ones that are operating. Now, let me not give the impression that this is a done deal. This is something that we're working on right now. The chief product officer at Intuit and I are, and many other people are working on how to make sure that this is happening, but there's so much interest in getting it done that I'm really optimistic that it'll work out well. Yeah.
Hi. So you explained in the beginning. Am I not loud? Okay. Hi. Yeah. So you explained in the beginning that there is a challenge whenever you say that okay, we want to have an AI-related product or something, right? And even in the companies there is this notion that you do need AI to kind of improve your products, to make sure you get the right products to the customers, right? So that's one piece of it. And so basically improve or be empathizing with the customers, with your existing customers is one part of AI. But if you have a wearable as your product line, right?
A wearable?
Yeah, wearable, right? So like a headset, right? Could you actually say that, okay, empathizing with the customer is, as far as product, real contact with the product is now, but the future is something totally different? And how do you think about it, as a product manager or as a, chief product officer, how do you think about that future that AI can impact and actually bring companies' attention to it, to actually, fund all this?
Yeah, that's a tough problem. But the way I would think about it is that you have to cast the vision, but then you have to show bite-sized pieces. This is something our CTO talks about quite a lot. So the vision is, we know where we are today. We have a belief about where we need to go tomorrow, but I emphasize it's a belief. We don't actually know where we need to go, but we think we need to go over here. But in order to get there, divide the work up into bite-sized pieces where at each time, at each quarter, you can show real value. And let me give you a real-life example to that. If I came to you and I said, good news, I'm going to build a system that in 10 years is going to be able to ingest the US tax code, you'd probably say, I'm too busy for this, right? It's not going to work. I have no reason to believe that it's going to work, on and on. But if I said, that's my vision, but in the next quarter, I'm going to be able to simplify the first 100 lines or the first 1,000 pages or whatever metric you set, and you achieve that metric, it gives people a lot of desire and a lot of interest and inclination to buy into the bigger story that you're selling. What I think happens often is that we get enamored with the long-term vision, and we have a hard time articulating the steps that are tangible to get to that vision. And what I'm arguing here is that attention to the long-term vision is important, but then the intermediate steps and showing and writing down with rigor the metrics and the milestones that you intend to achieve and publishing them so that everybody can see them. Not just you and the product manager, but you and everyone else in your company can see them. Yeah, we're claiming that next quarter we're going to be able to do this, or in 2 quarters we're going to be able to do this. That gives a certain amount of rigor, frankly, a certain amount of pressure, so that the team sticks to the goal. And if you don't meet those numbers or those metrics or those qualitative metrics, by the way, for me, it's not all about numbers. You can write qualitative metrics down too, qualitative values. If you don't achieve them, then maybe you have to make some adjustment. But that would be the way I would address it.
We have a question up here.
Oh, yeah.
So you talked about taking the tax code and then converting into a decision-making rules engine. Could you triangulate the technologies and the problem?
Yeah.
What you use for each step?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, natural language understanding plays a very critical role. This is a problem that's qualitatively and quantitatively different than the problem of reading, quote unquote, a New York Times article, right? Because those articles can be quite literally about anything. They can be structured in different ways. It's hard to identify rules in those kinds of systems. But the fact is that the US tax code is a very large set of very complex rules, but they're enumerated and they have certain structure to them. They always say things in certain ways. And so we can take advantage of that. So that takes a very, very massive problem, quote, understand the language. And it says now understand US tax code, which for me is actually still a big problem, but still smaller than understanding all language. Now each rule that's there can be decomposed into its constituents. They tend to reference a certain box on the form. That box has a number associated with it. And that box is often the sum or difference or a multiplication of other boxes. So you can probably see that there's a set of rules that are in operation, and there's also a graph that's in operation. And these two things have an overlay on top of them. Now, where does machine learning and statistical machine learning come in? So let's say that you wrote something and you hacked it together and it can do, let's say, the first 10 lines of the 1040, okay? Now the question is, did you do it right? Well, you could sit down and like read the rules and try and figure it out, but that's kind of difficult. But if you have tax data, or if you have other data, you can pipe it through the system and see what the computation is that comes out of the thing that you built. And if that is close to what you actually observe in real data, then you know I probably did it right, right? And so machine learning and prediction comes in at that point. Again, these kinds of innovations I think are quite unique, and credit goes to the team that is working on it. I've just joined the company about 10, 11 months ago, so I don't claim any credit for these kinds of ideas.
I think we have time for one more public question. Who else had a question here? I think you flagged me earlier.
So you mentioned earlier in the talk that you want data scientists to be more like product managers or have empathy, and then the product managers to, be able to think more like data scientists, right? How are you bringing about that cultural change?
Yeah.
Because it's almost an iron curtain wherever I've seen it.
Yeah. So the best way that we actually have quite a procedure around it, it's a formulated approach, but it's important to have team building exercises. And again, these kinds of things sound so cliche, but people are still people so far as I can tell. And if we have something in common, if we have similar backgrounds or if we have similar experiences, it breaks down barriers so that we can do things. So that's one thing. Second thing is to provide training to both teams about what the other one does. Because data scientists can say, well, we're so cool, and because of that, we can't get involved with product management. And frankly, product managers can say, these people actually don't understand what the customers need. And so having the training going both ways is very important. So we've actually launched, I think, an unprecedented data science training program within the company where people can go in for training for 1 day, I think it's a week, or 6 months of intensive training on the job in the company. So it's not like, here's Coursera, good luck. It's, come and learn from people who are teaching it live. And then on the flip side of that, having the teams understand customer empathy and so forth, we have a CDI and D4D trainings that I mentioned earlier, that gives them that acquaintance. And so those are some of the things that we're working on. But it really does come down to whether or not you're creating a culture within your company that allows people and encourages people to collaborate and communicate, because that drives innovation.
So unfortunately, that was our last public question. But again, thank you, Ashok, for speaking.
Thank you.
Please, can we give a round of applause again?